Peace. This is Wise for Wise Words Media. Back at y'all for another round. And man, I gotta say the most ungrateful, disloyal athlete I've ever seen in my life is James Harden. What a real piece of James Harden is, right? Because James Harden airs out Daryl Morey, right? Now, their conversation, whatever took place that he had or whatever, and Daryl Morey didn't fulfill whatever obligation or so that they spoke about, fine. But you gonna air that man out like that, call him a liar, you'll never deal with him ever again, based off of one bad turnout? One? Like, come on, man. You know how many times Daryl Morey put his head in the guillotine for James Harden? You know how many trades he's made for James Harden? First of all, James Harden wouldn't even be a superstar if it wasn't for Daryl Morey believing in James Harden and giving him them contracts in Houston and building a team around him that was completely catered to facilitate James Harden as a star, to make James Harden the primary guy in that offense and build around him. Daryl Morey did as much as he possibly could, talking about signing guys like Dwight Howard, which James Harden ran away. Signing guys like Chris Paul, which James Harden ran away. Signing guys like Russell Westbrook, which James Harden eventually parted ways with and had Russell Westbrook leave OKC for 1 year just to end up having to leave the Rockets again because this guy had him come over there off a trade and then he dips out. Like, James Harden then puts on 45 pounds and he looked like a retired uncle at the cookout on a layup line. And from that point forward, the Houston Rockets dealt him to Brooklyn. Daryl Morey was able to perform a miracle and get Ben Simmons traded. You know how crazy that was, that he was able to pull off a trade that included Ben Simmons, a guy that everybody knew had psychological issues when it came to the game of basketball, that he wasn't playing anymore, wasn't even practicing anymore. Like, he was able to perform a miracle and get a trade for Ben Simmons to get James Harden where he wanted to go, which was to the Philadelphia 76ers to play alongside of the MVP, Joel Embiid, and have a formidable duo right there that could win it all. A formidable duo that could win it all. And that team was not bad. They're not bad. They came within one game of going to the conference finals to play against Boston. They to play against the Miami Heat, because they were within one game. They were up 3-2 against Boston. And of course, in typical James Harden fashion, they choked. So that ain't James Harden's, but that ain't, Daryl Morey's fault. James Harden. What do I call him? James Harden is known on this page on Wise Words Media. He's known as James Houdini Harden, the greatest magician in NBA history. The man that you can count. You can count on one thing. Actually, there are two things that you can count on while James Harden is playing in the NBA. One, that there's going to be a champion crowned in June. And two, James Harden is going to disappear sometime between April and May. two things that I can guarantee you every year will happen. Somebody will win the championship and in June, and James Harden will disappear in either April or May. Two things I can guarantee you every season. Every season. So now you have James Harden, who pushed his way to Philly, got to Philly because of Daryl Morey, and now you're gonna air out Daryl Morey? Come on, man. That's real lame. I can't get with that, man. That's some real lame stuff. Like, you can't. The guy jumped through holes for you.
So come on, run.
He was able to facilitate that trade, which was not easy. Nobody in the league back then, nobody today wants Ben Simmons, and he was able to get Ben Simmons to the from the Philadelphia 76ers to the Nets in order to get Harden to Philly, which he, quite frankly, wanted to be, because he is a big, Daryl Morey is a big fan of James Harden. They've had countless years working together in Houston, and from this point forward, he felt that this was the biggest opportunity that Harden had to win a championship, which is to pair him up with Joel Embiid. And they still, honestly speaking, they still have a chance to win the championship. I don't know what James Harden is really crying about here, because he wants to go from playing with Joel Embiid, he's had his history of injuries. However, Joel Embiid is a healthier option than Paul George or Kawhi Leonard. So what's gonna happen then? Because James Harden, another name that I've given him on this page, is the destroyer of worlds. Everywhere he goes, he causes havoc. It's nothing but destruction in a franchise everywhere he goes. I mean, when he went to Houston, trouble there. I already mentioned guys like Howard and Chris Paul that got fired. He got people fired left and right. You know, he went to Brooklyn. Look at the mess that Brooklyn became. Brooklyn had a championship team. They had a championship team. Had they only kept guys like Jared Allen and Karis LeVert, they would have been a championship team. But instead, they gutted this team for this guy, and then he leaves. Then he gets Doc Rivers fired, and then he wants to leave? Come on, man. Nah, this dude he's the most selfish player, unloyal. He's disloyal. He is probably the worst superstar in the history of the NBA. It's got to be said. James Harden is the most overrated superstar you will ever see in NBA history. And he should be ashamed of himself, man. Airing out a guy who has done nothing but work hard to get James Harden to the mountaintop. And it's not Daryl Morey's fault that James Harden disappears every year in the playoffs. Whether it was against Golden State in 2016 when he disappeared that series. Whether it was against the Spurs where old Ginobili was taking him to school. Whether he disappeared against the Spurs. Whether he disappeared against Golden State when they broke a record going, 1 for 23 from the three-point line, when they just needed to win one game to beat Golden State. And these dudes went 1 for 23 from the three-point line. Shot one of the most atrocious games in NBA history. That was Daryl Morey's fault? Come on, man. This dude against the Milwaukee Bucks. People making excuses, he was injured. He wasn't injured. If you was watching those games, James Harden was diving for the ball. He was doing his step backs. He just shrinks in these moments. Last year, against the Celtics, disappeared again. This man he got a history of disappearing. There's just no two ways around it. And now he wants to go with the Clippers. And what's going to be the excuse when they lose? Because you're gambling that Kawhi and Paul George are going to be there. So what's going to be the excuse this time? He's the worst, man. The worst superstar in the history of the league. I'm Wadsworth Media. Peace.